Hello, fellow truth seekers. This is Barbara Jean. Um, I hope you enjoyed my last video. I'm so excited about it. But anyway, the Lord gave me something else. Um, I wanted to mention something before I continue. I've been taking the quinine, which is going to, with tonic water and the zinc, and my oxygen levels began to improve. And that was about 2 weeks ago, 2, 3 weeks ago. I began to drink some tonic water with some vitamin C and zinc and vitamin D. And I found and some chlorophyll. And I found that it was my oxygen levels improved, not hugely, but for about, I guess, 6%, 6 or 7%, something like that, maybe 5%. And then anyway, a couple of days ago, just 2 days ago, I took a cap, well, little cap full of hydrogen peroxide in a glass of water before I ate. And then yesterday I took it twice, the same thing, one in the morning, one in the evening. And this morning I woke up with so much oxygen. I feel like I'm getting a good breath. Finally, in like years, I feel like I'm actually breathing. Um, yeah, immediate. It was like within 24 hours or 48 hours, less than 48 hours. I've been feeling really good. I, I'm really getting some air for the first time in years. Actual years. Anyway, talking about that. Quinine comes from a tree. I believe it's a tree or herb from a tree. This goes along with my last video. I was just thinking, I was sitting here thinking about this uh, nations thing. Let me just see if I didn't even cue it up here on my computer. Um, Going back to the spirit of Elijah and this prophecy that my sister, this dream prophecy, which I think is absolutely huge, amazing. Um, the Church of Thyatira, the Works Church, you're hired. You've got a job, and you're going to fulfill this job. Um, I was thinking how each church, of course, has its own set of, and each dispensation of church dispensation and church type, and there's seven really, and how each one of them has their own set of problems they have to overcome. And when they overcome it, then they're given a certain reward, and how incredibly huge this is. Okay. And I was thinking about how this Church of Thyatira, the Works Church, the Faith Church, and they're dressed in their little flower gown. The baby's holding a bouquet of flowers. She's wearing a flower hat. She's in the garden. And I was thinking, herbs is for the healing of the nation. Isn't this interesting? Of course, this last Passover, who could forget? We're still in it. This coronavirus, the plague that has shut down the world. That's never happened before. A plague shutting down the world. I mean, you seriously, people, that's just craziness. That's never happened. And so here we are. The world is shutting down. The world has shut down for a plague. This is biblical. We are living in biblical times, people. Whoa! And the thing is, you know what? Most of us, we do things and we don't even realize we're prophetic. I mean, just think about the Bible. It's full of stories about ordinary people, and you may only hear about them doing one thing in their whole entire life. You know, one woman, she went to the well and she talked to Jesus, or this guy over here, he threw an axe head in the water, and this, da, da, da. You know, you may just hear about them doing one thing. They may just be seem like an insignificant player, a servant girl talking to uh, her master in a foreign land, and said, "Oh, by the way, there's a prophet over there," and the whole story of him trying to get healed from leprosy turns into a prophetic message. And that's our lives. Our lives are prophetic. Each one of us do things every day, and we don't realize that there's some prophetic message in it. For the most part, maybe not every single day we do some simple ordinary thing, but once in your lifetime or twice or however often that the Lord decides to use you, something happens. and not knowing to, maybe not even realizing it's being written down in heaven, and not knowing that somehow you participated in a prophetic movement. Something prophetic happened as a result of some simple thing that you thought was insignificant. Okay? So, no coincidences in God's kingdom. So, I was thinking again about this herb thing and how my sister was talking about how she's this that and I was putting together this healing of the nations. This is what it says here. Now, remember, the church of Thyatira, which is found in Revelation chapter 2, it talks a lot about this Jezebel. And Jezebel is a witch. She calls herself a prophet, a mighty woman, but she's actually a witch. And she uses her witchcraft to control the nations. Okay? But what happens is a plague comes. Okay? A plague comes, and um, the Bible, but here says in this the book of Revelation chapter 2, starting at verse 18 and on, it talks about how God is going to cast her into a bed, and them with that commit adultery with her into great tribulation, except they repent of their deeds. And I will kill her children with death, or in other words, with plague. And all the churches shall know that I am he that searches the reins of the heart, and everyone and unto give unto everyone according to their works. And so, and then he talks about the rest. It talks about how he's going to give them power over the nations. And he that overcomes and keeps my works also unto the end, to him I will give power over the nation. And he shall rule them with a rod of iron, as the vessels of a potter shall be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father. Now, I was thinking again, and I thought, okay, power over the nations. There's this nations thing. And then when you go to Revelation chapter 2, when it talks about this tree of life, and my sister was talking to me, just like I was telling you in my last video, about the fig tree, and how Jesus spoke to the fig tree and it shriveled up, and how we are all, when you grow something, basically you eat of your own tree. You are growing something, you're planting seeds, and you're growing of your own fruit. If you plant evil seed, you're going to have to one day eat your own fruit, whether you like it or not, because that's what you grew. You reap what you sow, basically. You reap what you sow. And so therefore, here it says here, but this is what I found, was I was thinking about, that I thought was really, really interesting. Now, she told me that when she gave this word to Bill Gates, and you think about what he sowed into this world: poisons, plagues. That's what he has sown. He has sown plagues. He produces and uh, produces plagues. He produces viruses. He patents them, and then he patents the cure for them in the form of vaccines. Okay, that's what he does. Okay, so he is actually sowing chaos and disease into the world. That's what he's been doing. That's the tree, and it's the tree of witchcraft. Now, well, I was thinking to myself, this is really interesting that this has happened, and that this tree of evil, this plagues that they've been sowing, they're going to sow for themselves. It's going to fall on their own heads. Okay, but what came to my mind was, I was thinking about this verse here that I read earlier in my last video. It was talking about the tree of life in the garden of paradise. When Jesus has come, he comes to take us, and in heaven there's this tree of life. um Let me see, just see if I can find it here. Revelation chapter 2. Here's the bright and morning star. It talks about the bright, Revelation 22:16. And I, Jesus, sent mine angel to testify unto you these things unto the churches. I am the root of the offspring of David and the bright and morning star. Now, which is interesting, because that's what it talks about, the church of Thyatira. He talks about um, um, uh, that he will give you the bright, he will give you the morning star. So Jesus is the morning star. Okay, but I was also thinking, like I said, the star. We always call someone who's reached fame and fortune a star. He's a star. He's got notoriety. Okay, so basically that's what he's promising the church of Thyatira: notoriety. People are going to know who you are for what you're doing in the world. Okay, so anyway, he has this water of life, And there's also a tree. Now, let me see if I can find a tree. Oh, here. It's a little bit further up. It talks about this river, and then it talks about this tree. And Revelation chapter 22, verse, let's just start at verse 1 and then we'll read verse 2. And he showed me a pure water of river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb. And in the midst of the street and on either side of the river there was a tree of life, which bare 12 manners of fruit, and yield her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. And there shall be no more curse, but the throne of God and the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. So I want to just highlight that part. The leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. And if you go back to Revelation chapter 2 and the church of Thyatira, and it talks about the bright and morning star, it talks about that he will give them power. Keep my works to the end. To him will I give power over the nations. Now, it's interesting that at this time, we're going through a plague, and we're finding out that a very simple solution to the plague is a tree that produces quinine. It produces quinine and it's inexpensive, it's available, and it gets rid of the disease. This to me is like this is so prophetic that this time when we are all under house arrest pretty much for a plague, the whole world is shut down for fear of a plague, and we're finding out that this tree of life is available to the nations. Is that a coincidence? And that Jezebel and her prophets who have spread disease and plague through their actually processing disease, they are finding new diseases to process and to create. They're creating disease. These people will fall by their own, they will have to eat the fruit of their own tree. They will reap their own rewards. They will reap what they have sown. And when she had that vision of being hired, and also understanding that she was supposed to be she was given the spirit of an Elijah. Elijah is the spirit that comes against the prophets of Baal, the prophets of Jezebel. And the church of Thyatira brings down and overcomes. That's their strength. That's what they're supposed to do. This faith church. Every church has a set of problems they have to overcome. And they do. Because Christ is faithful. And because Christ will, the gates of hell shall not prevail against the testimony of those who confess Jesus Christ. And the church of Thyatira's job is to defeat Jezebel and the witchcraft, but not to say everything is wrong, everything is evil. That's grown, because everything was created by God, and God knows what needs to be used in order to heal the nations. I hope you're getting what I'm saying. This is prophetic. This quinine, this hydroxychloroquine, and all the other natural remedies that they have been suppressing from humanity, and that's hydroxychloroquine is not the only remedy, the only natural um, cure for diseases. There's others out there that have been suppressed and kept from humanity. They have suppressed and hidden these things because they wanted to pump us full of their poisons. And they have done it for decades. They have filled us full of vaccines and things they said that were good for us, but actually we're killing our bodies and killing our souls, killing our minds, separating us from God. But the church of Thyatira, with their prayers, with their works, through their charities. So look what he says about what they do. I know thy works and charity and service and faith and thy patience and thy works, and the last to be more than the first. Wow. And that's their calling. And what I'm just feeling so optimistic that we are now, that this cure, this tree of life, this tree of life is going to go out, and the diseases that this cabal, the synagogue of Satan, has tried to kill the world with is now, they're going down, people. They're going down. They're going to be exposed, and they cannot stop the truth because we've reached, what's that word? Um, Maximum, something about uh, maximum exposure, or what is that? When the consciousness has gotten to the point where it's, the knowledge is so great that you can't stop it, and even transmit spiritually from one area to another. It doesn't even have to, you don't even have to have physical contact, that there's messages going out throughout the world through a spiritual, through the angels and the airwaves. It's out there. The truth is there, and it's reached maximum, whatever that's called. I can't remember what it's called, but you know what I'm saying. And then I was thinking, this is so amazing. I was thinking, I meant to mention, I didn't have time in my last video. I wanted to talk a little bit about this tree of knowledge. And it's interesting, I was thinking about a tree. I was thinking about the tree of knowledge and good and evil. And I was thinking, how interesting that is, that when you go back to the beginning, when man and woman fell, and they were eating a tree. It was the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and it caused them to die. It killed their souls. This tree, this fruit of this tree, fragmented them, fragmented their spirits, and brought them death, and brings us death when we eat of this particular tree. And yet when we eat of other trees that God has given to us, they bring us life. And this tree that man had eaten here, this tree of knowledge of good and evil, which is interesting because it's knowledge that this tree gave them. I was thinking about how why is it that eating of the knowledge of good, because this tree of knowledge and good, of good and evil, wasn't just the tree of evil. If you eat this tree of evil, you should die. It was the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Let's just read that just for a moment. I just want to go there for a second. So they were in a garden, which of course is things that are growing, natural herbal things. God has given them all these herbs and plants, things and fruits to eat. And they had free reign to eat as anything of all these things that Lord had made. But in the midst of the garden, they were told not to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And that's Genesis 2:9. And out of the ground the Lord made to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree of life is also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And so what happened later on, as we know, that the serpent, which was more subtle than the rest of all the other creations, uh, tricked Eve into eating this fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, nothing happened to her right away until Adam ate. And when Adam ate, that's when both of what the Bible says, their eyes were opened. Let me just find that here for you. Chapter 3. He was very subtle. And interestingly, this is what Satan says about this tree. For this is what he says to Eve. For God knows that in the day thou eat thereof, your eyes shall be opened. Then the words, you'll have knowledge, and you shall be as God, knowing good and evil. It doesn't say that you are good or you are evil. That's not what happened here. It wasn't the eating that made them evil. It was the knowledge that made them evil. Okay, it was the knowledge. It was, in other words, they would see things. They would be able to see both good and evil. Now, I thought that was kind of interesting because when they ate, she ate the fruit. Nothing really happened to her, and then she gave the fruit to her husband. See, it was okay. I didn't. I'm still here. It's okay. You eat. So he decides to eat. He eats it. And then it says, and the eyes of them both were open after Adam had eaten. Okay, now they go and they make aprons for themselves, and the Lord says to them, why did you do this? And of course, the woman did it, and he did it, and oh, they did it. And everyone's blaming everybody else. Okay, what I wanted to really say here was it fragmented their soul. This knowledge, it 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 opened their imaginations to both good and to evil. They were like innocent babies. And I was thinking to myself, if you try to put knowledge into a little baby mind of even good, a newborn baby's mind is so vulnerable and so open to so much. I mean, you have to be very careful with a little baby. Of course, you can't overstimulate the baby. You put too much knowledge into a baby's mind or try to stuff it full of things that it's not ready for, it's going to fragment the mind. It's going to fragment it, which is what happened to Adam and Eve. They were this knowledge, they weren't prepared for it. You understand what I'm saying? They weren't prepared for that knowledge, even the good part. What do you mean they weren't ready for the good part? I don't know about you, but if I had to learn everything there was about God in one moment, like that, 1 second, take a fruit, boom, there it is. I think it would fragment you. It would be so much like, what does it say about people who see the face of God? It's so much it kills them. That's why God couldn't appear, allow Moses to see him in his glory, because it would have killed him. And Moses was a pretty good guy. Of course, he wasn't perfect. You all know he wasn't a perfect man. But God said to him, if I exposed my glory to you, it would kill you. You couldn't handle it. And that's what the same thing with us. When Adam and Eve ate that fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, it fragmented their souls. It fragmented their minds. The evil, of course, would have fragmented anybody's mind, even just understanding and seeing it. Like, oh, I mean, that you try to tell someone, sometimes it's like red pilling somebody. When I was in the grocery store, not too a few weeks back, and I was talking about fake news on the newsstand here, and now it's fake news. This guy started to shiver, like it was almost like having a fit from having me say it's fake news. And all of a sudden, his whole counter, he just shut down. He couldn't handle it. I thought he could, but apparently he couldn't. His mind was too fragile. And that was what happened to Adam and Eve. When they ate that fruit of that tree, it fragmented them because the knowledge of both good and evil was so overwhelming. It fragmented them. Isn't that amazing? That's amazing. So the tree of knowledge was and of good and evil was in the same garden, in the midst, the same as the tree of life was also there. And Jesus took away the tree of life. He wouldn't allow them to eat of it. Because if they did, in that fallen state, in that state of sin, they wouldn't have had no chance of redemption. There would have been no redemption possibilities for them. He couldn't redeem them. And so he withdrew the tree of life from him in order for him to go through the processes of healing and coming together back as one. And that's what we've been doing for the last 6,000 years as mankind. Every stage, every dispensation, we have been healing through the tree of life, which is Christ Jesus. He died on a tree. He died on a tree. And he was the tree of life. And he gives us the ability to get healed, and he brings together those shattered, fragmented parts. That's the knowledge of sin and participation in sin, so a lot of times, and the knowledge that we want good, we want to bring good into our lives, but we can't handle it. We can't handle the truth that we are so far from what we really, the ideal. And as we mature, he's bringing us together, but he's also maturing our minds to be able to appreciate and to envision the good things of God. And God is giving us a little more. He gives a little bit more of himself. He shows himself through the Holy Spirit. He shows us through his son. He shows us through relationship. He begins the process of helping us to heal and mature so that we can see things from God's point of view. And even one day, we will know what God knows. What? We will share in his eternal mind when we have gone through the testing and the healing that's required for us to be able to receive it. His mind is ever eternally creative. And one day we will also be part of the eternal creation too, of always creating new things, creative things. Our minds were meant to live on forever and to be eternally creative, just like the Creator's mind. And one day when we are all healed and put back together, finally, as one-minded, the Bible says double-minded. We won't be double-minded anymore. We'll be single-minded. When left hemisphere and right hemisphere all work together, and we can see things the way God sees, and we'll have that knowledge. And guess what? This education of the how evil truly evil is, it's been mind-blowing for me. I'm glad it came in little bits. That's all I'm gonna say. If I had known how truly evil was, and I am sure I haven't even explored the depths of evil in all the knowledge that I've acquired over the last 10, 20 years, I can't even fathom, and I don't even want to go there. This is stuff I didn't want to know, but unfortunately, in order for us to grow up and to be like God, to understand the depths of evil is something we don't want, and it's vain, it's destructive, it's chaotic, it doesn't do you any good. It's the tree of death. It's disgusting and horrible. I don't want it, and I wish I didn't have to know it. But one day, praise God, when we are all taken home, that knowledge of evil will no longer be a part of our psyche. He's going to remove it. But through this process of maturing, he has allowed us to open our minds and expanded our thinking and helped us to see things that we didn't have the desire or the strength or the stomach to see before. Because if we didn't, we couldn't overcome it. You know what I'm saying? If you don't have knowledge of something, we're destroyed for a lack of knowledge. What? Here they are destroyed. Adam and Eve is destroyed for too much knowledge. And here we are as Christians, as people of God, humanity, we're destroyed for a lack of knowledge. So we are going through this educational process where our minds are being able to mature enough so we can handle the truth. But I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but this is just amazing to me that these trees, one is the tree of death, and it's the tree of vain imaginations and people who imagined a vain thing and imagined using their imagination and their creativity for evil purposes and to hide truth, to occult things that are good for mankind, like they're trying to hide hydroxychloroquine. And here God has given man this incredible capacity for imagination and creativity. And it's been stolen from us by Satan and his minions. He keeps stealing and hiding what God has given us. I know I've heard stories about how people have come up with new formulas for gasoline that causes it to extend. You can, get by on a tank of gas for huge amounts of miles that you can't get on right now, or new cars that don't require gas and all kinds of stuff that run on garbage and all kinds of stuff. But all this knowledge and all this creativity that's for the good of man is being hidden from us. It's been stolen from us. And even health things that could have healed my mother and my brothers and my family and your family and other people's families. And they've been stolen from us by these evil, evil people who won't let you eat of the fruit of the tree of life. It's there for the nations. It was meant by God, a good thing. But what's happening now, that I was just thinking critical mass, that was the theory that I was, this critical mass when this awakening is happening to humanity, and we are coming to this place, a new place where we're going through a transition. That's why there's all this fuss. Satan is putting up a fuss, big people, big, 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 big time, and we can see it. Those who've been red pilled, because he knows he can't stop it. He's trying to keep people asleep as long as possible. He's been trying to keep people in this hypnotized, asleep mode so that he can continue to do what he's been doing all along, putting people into slavery and bondage and using people and killing people. And his destructive ways are unimaginable. He can imagine all kinds of things that I wouldn't want to go. I don't want to go there. Thank you very much. But we've reached a critical mass of awakening, and those things that were hidden, the herbs that were for the healing of the nations, and people who were meant to, good people who were meant to take offices that they didn't realize that God had called them to do. Just like my sister didn't realize, no, God had called her as an Elijah, and she didn't know what that meant. And now suddenly she's awakening to this power that she didn't realize she had, and that God had called her to walk in. And she's learning how to walk in it. She's been learning how to walk in it all these years. We've all been learning to walk in our own particular walking, our own particular calling, all these years. And now it seems to be this is the time when it comes to fruition. The things that we have sown in this world, we're now beginning to reap. Oh, I'm really excited. So anyway, I was just thinking how exciting this knowledge is. Tree of knowledge, like I said, it was been on my mind. This tree of knowledge, it's the knowledge that shattered their spirit. They couldn't handle it. It was too much. That's what killed them. That's what killed their soul. It was just too much information. Too much. Too much information. I can't handle it. Mind overload. And it fragmented them. And I think, like I said, particularly the knowledge of evil was probably, I mean, I know God doesn't even want to know what evil is. But of course, being God, he can't help himself. He's going to know. But we fragile human beings, especially in the garden when we were like innocent babes, we certainly couldn't have handled it. And that's what killed them. That's what killed them. It was the knowledge that they weren't ready for. But anyway, I think that this also the church of Thyatira, which I was thinking about how these cures that have been withheld from humanity is now going to be, there's going to be no stopping it. You can't stop. You can't stop critical mass. You can't stop it. It's now out there. And these things that Satan has been trying to hold on to and hide and keep for himself and keep from humanity, he can't do that anymore. And so these healthy natural cures, the trees of life, are going out there for the healing of the nations. Okay? So isn't that great? And that's interesting. One last thing before I finish here. I was just thinking how it's interesting that a lot of people who call this herbology, knowing natural things, knowing natural path things, knowing how to use organic things, which of course we as human beings are organic, but those, a lot of, even especially a lot of Christians will say, oh, that's witchcraft, which I find is quite interesting. And yet these are the same people who are willing to put chemicals in their bodies, chemicals and mercury and formaldehyde in vaccines in their bodies. They're more than willing to do that. That's okay because my doctor prescribed it. Of course, that's not witchcraft. But to look at things that are natural oils, natural herbs, things from trees, when Jesus Christ himself said that the healing of the nations is in the trees. It's in the herbs. Now, come on, people, Christians, people. Wake up. Take the red pill. We've been lied to. Time to come out from underneath that witchcraft, mind controlled, hypnotic ideology. Well, my doctor's got 2 PhDs. That makes him expert on how to get healed. Mentality. You need to go to God. He has the answers, okay? And anyway, that is all I need to say on this video. God bless. And I hope you have a good day. And if you haven't given your life to Jesus Christ, there is still time. God bless.